that's wonderful. I'm so happy to be a part of all of this wonderful
era of
wonderful nonsense. You bet. It was too, and I think we enjoyed every minute of it. I don't think, well, a lot of us lived through it, but I don't know how. And everybody was happy, and there was money to be spent. And of course, with this prohibition, I mean, that was fun. And sneaking around, and the jazz age, and well, I don't know. I think you kids have a lot of fun today too. I don't know. You don't seem to think so, but I do. You have more problems today that confront you. I mean, with this upsetting in the world. But when I listen to this rock and roll and look at you kids, I don't think it's a whole lot different than the Charleston and the Varsity Drag, and then there was our favorites. There was Cliff Edwards, and Everybody Happy. The jazz was around. I don't know that there's so much different. I know when I was a kid, I used to look at these pictures and listen to the songs of the gay 90s, and I used to say to my mother, oh, I wish I had lived then. It was so gay and so wonderful. And I think every generation looks back. Now, this all seems very mysterious and wonderful to you kids, and when you have kids, they'll say, gee, Dad, all those 50s, they were something, and they'll try to imitate the same thing. I really think it goes in cycles. When your kids come in and to say, gee, Dad, I wish we had done that, and so forth, it's the same thing. I don't think it's changed a great deal.
It hasn't really at all?
No, I don't think so. I made my first record for Victor in 1928. I was at the Paramount Theater on Broadway with Paul Ash, the late Paul Ash. He gave me my start, and it was the first time that I had injected this phrase of boop boop a doop into any song. It was a song called That's My Weakness Now, and the Victor people had me make a test record of it, and they liked it, but they were very stiff up there at that time. I mean, about what things meant, and very particular about their artists, that nothing would be risque. So they wanted to know what boop boop a doop meant, because people laughed at it, and I said, well, I didn't know. It was just a form of rhythm that I had. So they made this record, and it was a bomb. It really was. It was a sneaker, and I guess it sold over 1 million copies of that particular record. And then, of course, I got a contract, and I kept right on recording for them, So I made an awful lot of records. I should say, 40, 50 million, I guess. And they sold, and as I say, there weren't as many people recording in those days, so the people bought the artists that they liked. I never heard about the million seller until recently when they started to give the gold records. We didn't have that presentation then. But I think you could tell by your royalties just about whether you had a hit or not. And, of course, the companies knew, and they didn't have any way of exploiting the record except that the people that bought your records really loved you, and I think they bought with a different sense, and they kept the records. They didn't buy as many at a time like the kids today. They go out and, they buy. Definitely. But, yes, and they kept their records, and a hit would last a whole lot longer than it does today. Today if you don't get it in the first couple of months, you haven't got it. But, I mean, it took longer to establish a hit, but it stayed. I say most everybody records. I mean, with a voice or without a voice. I mean, years ago, they determined an artist. I mean, you were individual, and there were comedy records. I mean, that I think they should do again. I always missed them. We had laughing records because you never could have a dull party. All you had to do if people weren't having fun is put on a laughing record.
Well, what was a laughing record?
Not anything. A man started to laugh, and it grew louder and funnier, and he laughed, and everybody laughed. It was the silliest thing, but more fun. And then they had people like Kane on the telephone, and Italian comedy records, and yes, I mean monologue, that a man would do that were so entertaining. I mean, it was done in just as he would do it on the stage, and they were very popular. Well, I think people listen differently than they do today. I really do. In theaters too, or to sound, because you see, they're so attuned to a certain mechanical sound that the voice itself when they hear it. Immaterial to whether they can hear it or not. They can hear it all right, but they have to have a certain volume because the ear is attuned to that particular sound.
Yeah.
Because, when I started in the big theaters like the Paramount and the Capitol, the Roxy, they didn't have microphones.
But they didn't.
No, that surprises you.
You had such a sort of
I had a very tiny
voice,
voice, but a very penetrating voice. I mean, I was trained, and everybody that was in the theater had to be heard. And if you weren't heard, you just weren't there because they had nothing to amplify you. So, I mean, and then, of course, people came in to listen to you. They listened more attentively, I think, than they do today. I mean, they didn't have that blaring sound. They had to listen. And, of course, you had to be trained. And if you couldn't be heard, you just wasn't in it. I mean, there are a lot of people that would never have been heard of today that are very, very big stars today. And they're wonderful, but without the amplification. They put them in a house like the Paramount.
Yes. When did the microphone come in, would you say?
I think late 29, around 30, but I played them without. The biggest houses.
Must have been a novelty in itself, having a microphone.
I hated it. I hated it because I felt that I was stymied. I had to stay. I used to like to use the stage and use more of it. But then when this thing was planted in front of me, I didn't like it at all. But I had to use it, even though they could hear me. There was a different sound. If an act came on before and used the mic, and you didn't, the people said, I can't hear you.
No, well, that was psychological.
It is, exactly. That's just what I'm trying to say. It was, definitely. I happened to come in just at a time when radio was just beginning to, it was just beginning to come in rather big. People had the crystal sets, and they were making the radio, and of course, I'll never forget the first time I was in a radio studio. We were in an act with 5 girls in Philadelphia, and they said, come over, and we want you to go on the radio. And I said, radio, what's that? So we went in this room, and they had it, and so I said to the man, how dumb can you be? I said, can I hear it later? He says, hear it, that's gone over the air. It was a very small little station in Philadelphia, one of the first. And this is about 1925 or 6, I guess. And the people had crystal sets. They sat up all night trying to get Philadelphia, Jersey City, And then, of course, when radio got to come into its own, people stopped buying records. And the record business went absolutely plunk. About 1931 or 2, it started to get very bad. And I mean, because radio became so popular, people didn't buy records. It's only in the recent, I should say the last, 10 years? People got tired of the radio. Then, of course, they had television, and that was new. But then that started, then the kids wanted to dance. There wasn't enough dance music on television, so they started to get the records again. That's what really did it. It's very gratifying to me that the younger generation like me very, very much. I'm very flattered. I mean, we went up to this Barnum Festival in New Haven, and I think that I would say that 70% the bells are ringing. That's my door. That 70% the audience were teenagers, and really I was quite a hit. And I have noticed when I was out on the road, this sound of boop boop a doop is a new sound to them, and they like it.
I wanna be